Hello, everyone. My name is Simone. I am a member of the GYBN Caribbean Steering Committee, and I'm really happy to have you all here with us today as we officially launch our Caribbean chapter. So as we prepare to start, please, we encourage you to just drop your name in the chat and just say where you're from. And of course, we just want to extend a happy International Biodiversity Day to everyone. So we will start in approximately 1 minute, and in the meantime, please share your name and where you're from. Okay, great. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon or this morning, wherever it is, whatever the time is where you are. My name is Simone Ganpat. I am a part of the GYBN Caribbean Steering Committee, and I am just so happy and excited to finally be here today on International Biodiversity Day to officially launch the GYBN Caribbean Chapter. So today we will be discussion with three very amazing, impressive young women in biodiversity conservation. And this webinar will be one of several that we will have throughout our GYBN Caribbean journey, but it's very, very special for us, as we all know. And if you didn't know yet, now you know that today is International Biological Diversity Day, and we are just overjoyed to be able to finally reach this point and celebrate and welcome and officially launch GYBN Caribbean. So just to share, each of these steering committee members will just give a brief talk on their 1 minute on their experience so far in bringing this together. I just want to say this has been, I think, about 2 years in the making for me in particular. There was one day I messaged GYBN Global account on, I think it was Twitter, well, Twitter back in the day. And I was like, listen, I want to start a chapter in my country. How do I do that? I think I got a response like a couple months after. But then fast forward a year later, I was speaking to Tyrell and he was telling me, given Latin America and the Caribbean, we're thinking about starting a Caribbean chapter, just knowing the importance and the difference between Latin America and the Caribbean and how unique our realities are in the Caribbean, especially as it relates to our young people and our biodiversity. And, it was just uphill from there. And over the last couple of months, we've been working arduously. I will let the rest of the team share their sentiments, but I am elated, overjoyed, and just really, really happy to have you all with us today and just start this journey. So I will hand it off to Tyrell to share his sentiments.
Thanks a lot, Simone, and thanks a lot, everyone, for taking the time to join us on this very special day, International Biodiversity Day. As Simone would have said, it's such an honor to be, first of all, a part of this committee with such exceptional young people who are doing incredible work around the region, but now to be a part of this community of like-minded young people in the Caribbean that are really dedicated to biodiversity conservation and committed to the cause. Like Simone have said, it has been a journey, but I'm very happy that we are here today and that now we have the opportunity to join the global giving community and really contribute our Caribbean perspective on biodiversity issues, as well as participate in transformative change. And that is, well, and my point, transformative change. You know, we hear a lot of speaking, but we truly want to contribute to on the ground biodiversity conservation projects in the Caribbean. So thanks a lot for being here this afternoon.
Thank you, and I will hand it over to Rahim from our team.
Thank you very much, Simone. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So good afternoon to everyone. It's really great to see everyone here. My name is Rahim Smith. I'm from Grenada, which is better known as the Isle of Spice. And for me, being on the steering committee has been an amazing experience. You know, I've always wanted for there to be a GYBN Caribbean chapter. And when Terrell reached out to me, I did not hesitate to say, yes, I will be a part of the steering committee, you know, to support the work, to push for the launch of the chapter. And for the past few months, you know, the team, Terrell, Simone, Bonita, we have worked really, really hard, you know, to mobilize the resources and get the information and bringing together the speakers for the launch of this chapter. And I have to say kudos to them because they are definitely amazing people. So I'm really, really excited for the launch of this chapter. And I'm really excited to see what future GYBN Caribbean holds in terms of advocating for conservation in the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rahim. And now, Bonita, I'd like to invite you to share some words.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Benita Bernard. I'm from Guyana. I would say, like, just to avoid echoing too many of the same sentiments of my fellow committee members, it really has been an extraordinary experience getting to this point. I remember it just being a thought. I guess it preceded my attending the COP15 event. However, when GYBN Global would have indicated that they did want the chapter for the Caribbean region, since last year when Tyrell reached out to me, I was like, yes, let's do this, let's get it done. And it has been a whirlwind experience so far working with everyone. And I would say I'm very proud to see what we would have been able to achieve in this time and the hard work that everyone puts in. I must say that the chapter is definitely envisioned to be one that has longevity and creates great impact for both Caribbean youth and biodiversity. And we're just hoping to see how it grows and yeah, take it by storm. And definitely congratulations to the team as well. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great session today at the webinar.
Thank you so much, team. And now, swiftly moving along, I would like to invite Miss Michelle Small-Bartley, who is a representative of CARICOM, or the Caribbean community. So please, whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, hold on.
Great, we can see you now.
Great. All right. You know, I sat here and I was listening to the sentiments that were shared. And I have to say that the thought that came to my mind as Simone spoke and Simone and Bonita, as they spoke, the thought that came to my mind was when you visualize, things do materialize. So your vision has come to pass. Let me say good afternoon to everyone and happy Biodiversity Day. It is indeed a privilege for me to be here this afternoon with you guys to share in to this groundbreaking launch. Together, as we meet together virtually, I want us to recognize that this is a significant endeavor, a collective effort to address critical issues that profoundly impact the ecological resilience and the sustainability of our beloved Caribbean region. So as I listened to Simone spoke and talking about the realization of this network, it really warmed my heart. This initiative is just not timely. It's not just timely alone, but it's a crucial step as we stand at the crossroad in our relationship with the natural world. The Caribbean, renowned for its rich and unique diversity, is grappling with unprecedented challenges that not only endanger our ecosystem, but also the very bedrock of our sustainable development. It is a stark reality that demands urgent action to halt and reverse this alarming trend. Our young people, often referred to as our future leaders, or change agents, or ambassadors of change, are not only the hope for a better future, but they are the most critical group to lead us into the new world. I'll just pause at this point to say that I personally am very passionate when I see young people really make an effort to make a difference. It really warms my heart. And so as the documents were shared with me for this event, I could not help but review the work of Terrell, Bonita, Simone, and Rahim, your steering committee that will lead you. And what I saw was your exemplary leadership and dedication to environmental conservation and advocacy in the region. Your diverse background in geography, marine systems management, ecology, and youth leadership brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table. You have all done this, and it is your deep passion is showed in the work that you have done. And I'll just say, keep up the good work. Of course, the CARICOM Secretariat is fully aware of the value and worth of our young people. Over the past 3 years, we have been actively involved in climate change and health workshops, building the capacity of our youth ambassadors and other regional youth leaders. We're committed to ensuring continuity and increasing awareness among our youth, because we believe that your potential is what will drive the change for the new world that we so desire. The workshops that we have done over the past several years have led to several initiatives and projects, 3 of which have been implemented already. We had one implemented in Trinidad and Tobago, one in St. Kitts and Nevis, and one in Turks and Caicos. And we have quite a number of projects that have been developed over the past few months that are in the pipeline to be implemented. What I found remarkable is how the young people were able to sit down and strategize. I take, for example, the project that was implemented in Trinidad and Tobago, that it advocates for it really addressed the young people who are advocates to mitigate the effects of climate change by engaging these young people in entrepreneurship training to turn recycled products into sustainable business ideas. What came out of it was not only the 20 young people that were trained, but what was remarkable is that these young people were able to design and develop business ideas to actually implement and to start businesses to focus on different areas. So we had one who focused on the severe impact of climate change on the global bee population. We had another who actually proposed a social enterprise that focused on reducing waste and empowering communities. And what was done in this business is that they actually taught young women to craft jewelry from recycled material like plastic, glass, metals, and fabric scraps that they would actually use for other products. The third business looked on upcycling wine and liquor bottles by recreating stylish, customized drinking glasses. That for me was fascinating. Our project that was done in St. Kitts and Nevis focused on building the understanding and skills of youth who embarked on a transformative journey into the world of composting. The project was actually driven by the goal of educating youth on multiple environmental benefits associated with composting. And this was done using a practical exercise with composting done in a central location and as well in the backyard of each participant. Our Turks and Caicos project actually looked on educating high school students using a workshop approach by building and enhancing their awareness and comprehension of the link between climate change and health. And this was subsequently followed up by a beach cleanup that was done to practice the knowledge that they actually acquired. Currently, our youth ambassadors are gearing up to facilitate discussions at the SIDS Children and Youth Forum with a focus of amplifying youth voices and ensuring their active participation in decision-making process. The efforts of our youth leaders are truly admirable as they thrive to make a positive impact on our community and the world at large. Through your volunteerism, advocacy, and active involvement in various environmental projects, they serve as inspiring role models for both the next generation of environmental stewards in the Caribbean. Again, I have to comment on the exceptional dedication and passion displayed by the members of your steering committee. It is commendable, and their efforts are actually paving the way for a more sustainable and biodiverse future for the region. I encourage you to persevere, knowing that even if the results are not immediate, your hard work and dedication will pay off, benefiting generations to come. Keep pushing forward and with your noble mission. And I urge you today to actively engage, exchange ideas, and explore opportunities for collaboration during the webinar. Together, we can make a difference and contribute to a sustainable future where biodiversity thrives. Thank you for this opportunity to be part of this great initiative. And let us embark together on a journey, uniting our resolve to protect and preserve our precious natural resources. And I look forward today to listening to Jody, to Natalie, and Giselle. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Small-Bartley, for your encouraging and kind sentiments. And now I will ask our Latin America and the Caribbean Representative Alan, who I may say has been alongside us for the entirety of this journey since inception. He was the one who would have had the meeting with us when we were very much more of us. And he has been there all the way, just giving us advice and, you know, supporting us in any way that he can. So I just like Alan to just say a few words on behalf of GYBN Alac.
Thank you very much, Simone. I don't know how can I explain like the feeling that I'm having like right now, particularly because you're very well said that I have been since the beginning of this process trying to talking with Tyrell to see if we can push to have a chapter in the Caribbean, because the something that we were lucky for the last years when this chapter of America and the Caribbean existed, we didn't have as much representativity from the Caribbean as we want to. So it was kind of a necessity that we had that bring your voices and to articulate together. So indeed, a real region coordinating each other to see how we can engage other non-young people, but also how we can exchange experience other spaces that we can also build together experiences. So it's really important, like me, like see all the results of all your efforts, because I just saw it, you like you you done the hard work. The first time that you sent me the draft for the for the Caribbean chapter, it was like these people know how to work, and it looks how it was it was like really amazing to see how much effort you put just for some words, but that translated into all the passion that you have. So I don't know how much express that I'm kind of impressed of the hard work that you have done, and I'm really expecting on how about the hard work that you are going to do, because I know each of you, Bonita, Rahim, Tyrell, Simone, all the effort that you put here. So I just want to say that congratulations, you made it. You can have this space for change to bring more Caribbean youth into this space, and we'll together what you think is better for you, knowing your priorities and pushing for that. Given from the given lag from the Caribbean, from the Latin American Caribbean coordination, we will be still with you, advising you. You can also like reach us for anything that you need, and we will be here for you. So congratulations again.
Thank you so much, Alan, for all your support thus far, and we look forward to expanding GYBN Caribbean and just continued work with GYBN LAC as we move forward. So to round up our welcome remarks and get right into it, I would like to ask Abu Bakr, who is from the GYBN Global Steering Committee, just to give us some more welcome remarks, and then we will get into the webinar for the day. So Abu Bakr, when you are ready, you can begin.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. In the GYBN Global Steering Committee, I represent the European region, and I'm happy to be here. I myself started my GYBN journey through a regional chapter. For mine, it was the Nordic regional chapter, similar to your situation where there's a bunch of smaller countries with interested and motivated young people. We didn't have the numbers to create a national chapter in each of our countries. So we made what I would call a successful regional chapter. It continues to survive as of now. And now we have great collaboration with our governmental organization, Nordic Council as well, and they continue to support us. And I think what really makes a regional chapter different is it allows people to connect across borders as well, aside from within borders. And another thing that I would want to bring from our experience in the Nordics with the sub-regional chapter is we try to use each country to push the other country. We tell Denmark you can do better than Sweden, and Sweden you can do better than Finland. I hope you can continue that similar strategy in the Caribbean region as well, and hopefully you find success as well in it. And I wish you lots of success, and hopefully you can get the chance to meet each other physically as well. For us, that was a great experience as well. After coming together, I think it has happened once or twice in my time, but whenever it happens, it's a special moment. But good luck, and hopefully you have lots of Zoom meetings and get some things done in the Caribbean region, because being a sub-regional chapter in the GYBN language would mean you won't be present in the same place physically, and hence would need to have more meetings like these to make yourself more effective. But good luck, and hopefully I get to see some of you in the COP later in this year as well in Colombia. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your welcoming remarks, and just want to again thank everyone who has given their remarks so far. And now it is time to get into the meat of the matter, what most of you came here for. And that is our panel discussion. And for those of you who are not sure, our discussion is around actions towards halting and reversing biodiversity loss in the Caribbean. So with that, I would like to introduce our first presenter, who's Dr. Jody Daniel. Dr. Jody Daniel is an ecologist and data scientist. She investigates the impacts of climate change and land use on biodiversity across diverse ecosystems, from Canadian wetlands and grasslands to Grenadian mangroves. Her past research includes studying climate change effects on wetland communities, predicting the cumulative impacts of oil and gas infrastructure on grassland songbirds, building cognitive models for Arctic seabirds, and explaining boreal tree growth. Currently, Jody is collaborating with researchers to improve the conservation of the critically endangered Grenada dove and enhance mangrove restoration success rates. She holds roles at Partner RE, NAP Global Network Secretariat, and Gaia Conservation Network, applying her expertise to pressing environmental and data science challenges. So I am very, very excited to welcome Dr. Jody Daniel to the stage. Please, when you are ready, you can begin.
Excuse Simone, I'm sorry, Dr. Daniel, but we just wanted to take a pic before Dr. Daniel presents.
Sure, not a problem. Okay, so we can do that real quick.
So Alan, you can feel free to take the screenshot.
Yes. Come on, people. We are here just to celebrate the International Biodiversity Day. Let's take a picture together. Cool.
Okay, great. So back to it. Sorry for that interruption, but Dr. Daniel, when you are ready, you can share your screen and begin.
Great. Is everyone seeing my screen okay? Cool.
Yes, and we can hear you.
Awesome, great. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm assuming it's afternoon where you are. I guess it's not afternoon for everyone, but good afternoon. First, I'd like to say thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share some of the work I've been involved with, and also some of the challenges we faced centered around biodiversity conservation. So a bit about me. I would say like one of the reasons I got into this type of work is like outside. I would say I spent most of my time either snorkeling on a beach or somewhere in the bush. I spent a lot of time outside. And so when an opportunity came for me to do more of that work, studying much of the natural environment, I took it. And that was at the St. George's University in Grenada, and I focused on marine and wildlife biology conservation. So following that, I did a bit of work in the Canadian prairies and eventually spread that further north to the Parkland and Boreal region. And as mentioned before, like I was doing work centered on better understanding the impacts of oil and gas infrastructure on songbirds. And then I switched into doing work with wetlands, and these are wetlands that sometimes dry up at some point in the summer. Not all of them do, but the big concern was the impacts of climate change, and not just climate change, but surrounding land use. Climate forecasts for the region suggests that eventually we're likely going to see more of them drying up, and these areas are really important for breeding birds. And then also besides the birds, you have important plant species there, you have important aquatic macroinvertebrates. So much of the work at that time was centered on understanding these relationships more clearly. And So moving on to some of the work that we've been doing in Grenada more recently, the first I can mention, we've been doing work along mangrove restoration and mangrove monitoring. So the mangrove restoration work has been really trying for us to improve our mangrove restoration success rates, simply because we've seen instances of us planting species in zones that may not necessarily fit the needs of that individual species. And some of the preliminary work we've done, and might be a bit nerdy, but we've been able to identify that these different species are in truth pulling different water resources. So one might be pulling more seawater than groundwater, one might be pulling more surface water than water that you get from precipitation. So that's something we're hoping to expand a bit more on. We've done some mangrove monitoring. This picture is from Lansepine in Grenada. I saw Sue on here, so that was on the wetlands that their family owns. And some of the work we did there was just monitoring all of biological communities we can find in the mangrove as well as outside of the mangrove, and then designing material that could be valuable for the public. And when you're passing by the mangrove, you know, like, what is this site? You know, why is it important? What are the birds you can see here? And then a QR code that takes you to a bit of information about the site. Another work we've been trying to push forward is getting a better understanding about the relationship between mangroves and Grenada's cultural heritage. So not just in Grenada, but other parts of the world, there has been a strong relationship identified between wetland areas and where you'd find indigenous, archaeological sites. And prior work has identified that particularly in Grenada and the Grenadines, there's a relationship, but the question is why? There are a lot of hypotheses, but our hope is to kind of, in collaboration with Caribbean archaeologists, get a better understanding of that. And you may wonder why. Simply because when we're talking about why these areas are important, we often focus on the birds and the plants and everything else. But something we don't often consider is the cultural value of these areas as well. So we're trying to do some more work in expanding our understanding of that. We're trying to do additional work on the Grenada dove. Now, the Grenada dove is critically endangered. There are fewer than 250 individuals remaining. They're isolated to 2 spots on the island, and many people on the island aren't even aware of that. So we've been doing work collaborating with other larger NGOs within the Caribbean to some fund work along monitoring these birds, monitoring the nests, trapping predators. In the future, we hope to do some banding simply to better understand the population dynamics of the Grenada dove. But all of this work we think is important in feeding into public education, because you can be telling people a bit more about, you know, this is the status of a dove, these are the threats they face, this is the actual quantifiable impact of the decisions we're making on the bird population. And then finally, some other things we've been doing, citizen science. So we've been trying to get folks more interested in the natural environment, and birds are often a very, 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 very useful taxonomic group you can use because there are a lot of tools for identification. So just last year, we started, had a group of people that go out somewhat monthly to sites. So they've learned how to identify birds, how to use binoculars, how to make use of apps like Merlin and eBird. And the hope is that with folks being more comfortable with identifying birds, this is something we can feed into the other monitoring programs that we do. And one of the things that I'd like to highlight is some of the issues you've had in biodiversity conservation in Grenada, and I'm sure these things translate to other parts of the region. The first being that we've seen issues with either inadequate legislation or issues with the legislation that currently exists not being implemented correctly. So one example of this would be Grenada passed the Integrated Coastal Zone Management Act, I believe in 2021. And while it's pretty comprehensive and it covers the coastal vegetation and ecosystems pretty well, we haven't implemented it. And we haven't implemented it simply because we have not appointed a director. So there's no director of the Coastal Zone Management Unit, which means the legislation has no teeth. Another issue we've seen is that some of the legislation, I would say, is inadequate. So we have the Physical Planning and Development Act, which does a pretty good job in highlighting how development process and building should happen on the island, but we don't have any EIA regulations passed alongside of it. So there's no framework for developers or even folks who may be concerned about our natural resources to depend on how this process should happen. We also have issues around information gaps. Now, as I mentioned before, Grenada has like suboptimal mangrove restoration rates in some cases. And I think we have to do a bit more on understanding the ecological needs and our land use context in improving our rates. And so that's one of the barriers we've seen. And finally, an uninformed public. And I'll bring up the Grenada dove again. Many folks in Grenada think the Grenada dove is thriving and everywhere. So they would see a bird on the telephone, why? And like, oh, that's a Grenada dove. Or they would see a bird in their backyard and say, oh, that's a Grenada dove. In reality, the Grenada dove is pretty rare. It's one of the rarest birds in the world, fewer than 250 individuals. And because this information is not widely available, we're not recognizing that when we make particular decisions about how we develop our land, that we're actually impacting this very rare species. And so I'd like to give a really quick case study that kind of, I think, illuminates some of the things I've been discussing. So coming up here are three massive projects that are happening on the island somewhat simultaneously, impacting wetland and not just mangrove habitat, but also coastal vegetation. The first one that popped up, and that's a picture from 2019. Again, this wetland was one of the most diverse from a bird community composition perspective. It looks dry, I know, but usually there's a lot of water. That picture was taken in dry season. And now in the picture below, let me get my Lisa. Yeah. So the picture below is what it looks like now. And why is this concerning? First and foremost, we have issues with water availability, and this is going to put more strain on Grenada's water resources in a part of the island that's pretty dry. But putting that aside, they have no plans to have their own water resources. So the EIA talked about a desalination plant that does not exist. They don't have any rainwater harvesting. But also we have impacts on the turtles that use the area. There were green sea turtles in the bay. There are coral reefs like Elkhorn, which we know are pretty threatened in our area. There's a lot of sediment going into the water, and there's just no mitigation strategies to deal with that. At the north of the island, the picture in the middle, we have Livera, which is the only Ramsar designated site on the island. And they're planning to put a massive development, 18 course golf course, 16 stories, 3 towers on a part of the island that does not have this level of infrastructure to support it. And in one of the consultations, the developer talked about, whoa, we'll just take water from this lake. That is crazy. I think it's crazy. But this is just part of the planning process that we haven't handled very effectively. So we have projects that are approved that may not be situated in the right part of the island or for the island at all. And finally, this one here in the middle, this is very close to Grenada dove habitat. So on the top, this is a picture in 2011 in dry season. That's why it's so dry. And on the one in the bottom, we have in 2023, you see like much of the headland is now gone. And the big concern there is we've lost Grenada dove habitat. Grenada doves have been known to call and nest in this area. And then so us giving planning permission, we've allowed developers to now erode into Grenada dove habitat. And as I mentioned, there are fewer than 250 birds left on the island. I don't want to just end in doom and gloom. I just want to say that I think with more folks in Grenada who are taking more interest in conservation, more people have been trained in ecology and conservation as well, and just simple citizen science, folks that are more interested in the natural environment, we are seeing a different tide. Folks are now advocating and talking about why we need to protect our natural resources more effectively. But I do think that one of the barriers when it comes to inadequate legislation, as well as poor implementation of this legislation, that's a gap that I'm hoping that we get to eventually. So thank you very much for your time. Sorry, I went a teeny bit over. But if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We will definitely get into a little conversation after. So I did forget to mention the format. So we will be having presentations from our presenters, and then we will go into a bit of moderated discussion, and then we'll have some Q&A with the audience. So thank you again, Dr. Daniel, and I will go straight into introducing our next presenter, which is Natalie Mioulis. And Natalie represents Sea of Life. And having grown up on the ocean to a fishing and farming family in the Bahamas, Natalie holds a deep connection and understanding to local coastal community needs. This deep understanding drives her passion to ensure that communities and ecosystems are healthy for future generations. Natalie received her master's in International Food and Resource Economics from the University of Florida. His specialty includes analyses of fishers' behavior and entrance into new markets and designing and managing sustainable fisheries projects. So Natalie, yes, I see you are ready, so you can begin.
Good afternoon. As introduced, my name is Natalie Mioulis. I am here in the Bahamas and representing the Sea of Life, which is a regional nonprofit organization in the Caribbean. And Sea of Life was really founded to meet the issues, many of the issues that we are discussing here today, centered around biodiversity, but looking at how can we solve the issues and the threats to biodiversity and also the threat to our oceans and our communities, but by putting people first in that solution and empowering local communities to do so. And the founders of Sea of Life, and our founders and ourselves and our board of directors come from large, histories of working in the conservation space and work in the conservation space around the Caribbean region, and really noted that this is a gap in terms of what implementations and what solutions are we working towards to meet these threats. And really the gap is putting people first in conservation and empowering people to implement the solutions that they see and that they think are appropriate for their communities and for their countries in our region. As you know, we cannot do it alone. No one can do it alone. But if we can empower our communities to implement their own solutions and have hopefully economic benefit back to them, then we can create a sustainable chain of really impact to our region as itself. And so Sea of Life seeks to move away from maybe the traditional ways of implementing change, which is normally you're putting the ecological benefit first, right? So normally you tell countries or you tell communities or you tell policymakers, we need to save fish, for example. I'll say we need to save the parrotfish as an example. Well, if you say we need to save the parrotfish, that's great, but we're also working in regions, and as everyone on this call understands the significance of our Caribbean region and the connection to its people and our people to the resources. And by putting actually the ecological benefit before the human benefit, we are creating a juxtaposition between people and our natural resources, when really we are so connected and so tied, and we should be working together. And so that is what Sea of Life seeks to do, is to put that human benefit first, and so that we can see the ecological benefit and create a positive feedback loop. And Sea of Life does this in many ways. But one of the specific ways that Sea of Life has sought to kind of change this model of intervention is through the Sea of Life Academy. And we have created this academy for implementation across the Caribbean and to really tackle any issue that threatens biodiversity or ecological health, ocean health of our communities across our region. And the academy's objective is to train communities or individuals in actually the science behind the issue that they want to address. So Sea of Life doesn't necessarily have one specific issue that it focuses on, or rather we tailor the education of the academy towards the issue or the threat that the stakeholders want to intervene. And then we, through the Sea of Life network, pull on technical experts and also and other examples around the globe and in the region of solutions in that field, and train the participants in those solutions, and then provide participants an opportunity to actually create their own solutions. And we provide them with mentorship in also the business sector, as well as marketing, et cetera, depending on what their solution is. Sometimes it's an education campaign, sometimes it's a for-profit business, and we provide that technical expertise to really see those solutions up and running. One of the key aspects of these academies is that we really seek to make them really reachable for all. Oftentimes, there are many barriers for participation of community representatives. Oftentimes, people are having to work a lot and they don't have time to participate in these academies, or sometimes it's childcare or elder care or transportation or internet, et cetera. And so we really try to provide as many financial incentives also for participation as we can, transportation, childcare, et cetera, to help kind of break down some of these barriers for our community so they can be involved in that process. We also seek a lot of the youth as well, so those under 35. And we also seek our elders too, because we believe that they also have a role to play, and they have that historical knowledge of our communities and these issues. And sometimes and often what we see in today is that our solutions are often those that our grandparents once implemented, right? So we believe in really having representation through all ages, and really having that diversity represented in our academies. And the academies are all application based, and also there is financial need based as well. So I want to give you one example of the academy in its implementation, and that is in Belize. So I see we have a representative from Belize today on the call. But in Belize, there was really this great call for tackling plastics. And we heard some great examples in the introduction as well to plastic. And we know that this is one of the threats to biodiversity and to the health of our ecosystems and our oceans across our region. But and really, we have a lot of communities that they have great ideas. They just don't have the technical support or capacity to implement their ideas. And so we had a really great high demand from Belize to implement the academy there. And we had actually, we had also participants and applications from all around Belize. And we're actually rolling into our second year of implementing the academy. And during the academy, one of the critical phases of the academy, not just understanding and having the scientific, maybe foundational education and getting the examples of solutions, is that when the participants create their solutions, we actually give them an opportunity to have instant feedback from angel donors, policymakers, other community members, private and public sector, et cetera. And and this allows them to have that instant feedback, and also an opportunity to network with policymakers and with business owners and with donors that maybe those that have an idea might have never had the opportunity to do so. And also there in that presentation is a little bit like a Shark Tank, where everyone presents their ideas, their business models, or maybe their education models. And when they get that instant feedback from this panelist of diverse stakeholders, then they are also rated. And they are rated and given feedback from this diverse stakeholder set. And those that really score the highest are the ones that we really focus on in terms of trying to help launch and support and get up and running. We do it for all of our solutions, but really those that they see the highest potential in, or the most likely or easiest to implement, maybe. We really focus on those and try to get those up and running. And in Belize, we had really great solutions come about. And one of those that really rose to the top was converting all of the campuses in Belize to refillable campuses. And this design and idea was created by Marvin Montereso from the Corozal district. And he is now successfully going to be implementing a refillable station within his school. He was a student at the time when he participated in the academy, and is implementing a refillable campus at his school. And we are actually in the process of helping. The school has just signed an MOU that we helped him design. We helped create a business model for the school so that this is actually self-sustaining for the school. The costs are self-sustaining for the maintenance of the system. And this school has also signed an official ban on all single-use plastics on the campus. So it's really been a great example of not only creating ideas, but also seeing them successfully implemented. And that's really what we want to see through these academies that we hope to see across the Caribbean. And this is just one example. We've had some other great examples come up from the academies as well. And throughout this, the implementation of the refillable aspect in the schools, we're also monitoring what the impact of that implementation of the refillable is. And so we've actually been working with Trash Splits as well, a partner, and implementing, training the students of the school in monitoring their plastic use. And so this really allows schools to say that, you know, we're doing something, but actually monitor and be able to give quantifiable evidence for the changes that they're making and the impact that's having on their schools and their communities as well. And so these are just a few pictures of the trash splits happening, actually where we're on the campus and actually counting the pieces of trash. And then this allows us for a baseline and to understand really what's causing pollution, plastic pollution, what type of waste is it, where is it coming from, and then have that measurable change baseline after implementation. And that's really important for these solutions to be able to have that monitoring aspect so that we can really speak to what is the impact of our solutions. And so you can follow us for more to see some more of our solutions being implemented in Belize and hopefully also across the Caribbean. And we also have an International Women in Conservation conference that happens annually in Belize, and where we seek to bring women from across the Caribbean, really actually the globe, but especially the Caribbean, that work in conservation together, so that we can network, but also every year we have a focus and capacity training for those women that show up. And this year it's focusing on grant writing. And so if you're interested in participating, please let me know as well. And I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to share the work of Sea of Life, but also for myself to say that as a woman from the Caribbean, it's wonderful to be part of this network. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for your presentation and sharing about Sea of Life. It's good to hear about the work that you're doing across the Caribbean, and we'll definitely get into a conversation soon. And please go ahead and share your links in the chat so people can get in touch. And if you wish to share your presentations afterwards for the presenters, we can, of course, facilitate that. So I'll move right on. And finally, we have Giselle Ragoonanan. She is the co-founder of the Trinidad and Tobago Bird Observatory and Research Center. She's a field researcher, a North American Banding Council certified bird bander and ecology student. So we are really, really excited to have our final presenter here. And Giselle, when you are ready, you can go ahead, and I think you're sharing your screen, right? So you can go ahead and do that.
Okay, thank you so much, Samantha, to everyone. Is everyone able to see my screen? Someone, can you see my screen?
It's loading. We saw it just now. All right, so we can see it now. Awesome.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Giselle Ragoonanan, as Simone would have shared with you, and I am the co-founder of the Trinidad and Tobago Bird Observatory and Research Center. I'm also an ecology student, and I really would like to take the time to thank Simone and Tyrell and all of the GYBN committee members for having me here. And I would also like to take the time to introduce my operations team. So this is the operations team for TTBO. We have Davika Budaram, who is our next founder. And Davika is an ornithologist on Tobago and runs the Tobago division. Giselle Ragoonanan is the program manager for TTBO on Trinidad and is also a certified bander. Alexis Marianis, who is our secretary, is a molecular biologist and a banding intern with the TTBO. And Shivam Mahadev, who is our vice chair, is a local ecologist and researcher, and also a bird bander with TTBO. And I would just like to take this opportunity to share my inspiration for getting involved with biodiversity conservation work. So I pretty much grew up in this really, really beautiful little village in Brasso Seco in Trinidad. And my grandmother was part of the indigenous community, who is here, right? Petra, with me as a baby. And my uncle Carl, who is just this very awesome person, got really involved in biodiversity and conservation work maybe over 35 years ago. He started off as an assistant researcher, and then in 2011, fast forward, Carl got into bird banding, met with John Alexander at the Carmen Bird Observatory and became a certified bird bander. And so I would just spend all of my time trying to be involved in biodiversity work. So this is kind of how I connected birds and bird banding. In 2021, I officially started to full-time volunteer with Carl and a local ecologist on 2 banding projects that they had going on. And it was spanning both islands across Trinidad and Tobago. And I started to go really hard with Carl, trying to learn more about banding. And that's how I connected using banding as a research tool. And then I realized that nobody on the island was using banding as a research tool to answer questions about the birds that are on our island. And so I really, really started to hone my skill here. I worked with some shorebirds on the Tobago Island with the ecologist and Shivam. I worked with some boobies and red-billed tropic birds. And then here, top left, I'm banding with Carl at the University of the Southern Caribbean, where we did an introduction to banding with some of the biology students. Fast forward, I started a fundraiser in 2022, and I went to Oama in Brazil, where I wanted to learn the science behind bird banding. So I had connected the skill of banding and how I could use it as a research tool, and now I really wanted to hone my science skills. And although my time was cut short in Brazil, I really learned a lot about banding. And so I came right back and started volunteering, which is where I would have met Ellie Davidish-Nelson, and then got connected with the Birds Caribbean team, which is when my story on TTBO really just boomed off. So here I am bottom with the Caribbean Bird Banding Network in Jarabacoa, Dominican Republic in 2022. And that's when I did my first land bird, banding workshop with the Birds Caribbean team, which was really awesome. And then fast forward to 2023, I went to KBO, got accepted at the Klamath Bird Observatory. So dreams do come true. And I was banding in the Pacific Northwest for 4 months, migrated to the Pacific Northwest and tracing migration there, learning about North American birds on their breeding ground. And then at the end of October, we realized that most of our friends that we made during that time was already migrating back south. And we had to make that migration back south as well. So when we were at KBO, we would have met Davika Budaram, who is the other founder, as I would have mentioned before. And that's where we started talking about TTBO, because we all realized that we were on the same page. There was nothing happening on the islands with birds and bird banding, and we really wanted to make something happen. So we connected, TTBO talks started happening. And then I came back in November of 2023, bag and baggage, and we started banding. So our mission statement, the TTBO, Trinidad and Tobago Bird Observatory and Research Center, revolves around promoting the preservation of critical habitats. We're conducting rigorous bird banding studies and fostering community engagement. So that's really what we're focused on. And some of our current projects include our long-term mist netting sample areas. So we run 4 sample sites, long-term mist netting sample sites. We have 2 on Trinidad and 2 on Tobago. All of our sample sites are registered MOSI sites. What does MOSI mean? MOSI is monitoring overwintering survivorship. So we monitor our local resident birds as well as migratory species. And we share this data with the Institute for Bird Populations so that we could continue to make conservation management plans. One of our other projects right now is reassessing the population size and distribution of the white-tailed sibling on Tobago. And this project was commissioned by the EMA. And another one of our projects that we're working on is sound communication recording, using sound communication as an analysis to detect species. And we have a 12-year follow-up on the golden-headed manakin project that's also going on, where we're doing a phenology study on the golden-headed manakin, which is top left. And this is just some of our data. So our banding efforts, we really started to band in February of 2024 on Trinidad as TTBO. Of course, we had some challenges when we came back in terms of securing permits and financing and stuff like that, which I would touch on a little bit later. But this is just a little bit of our banding effort. So we have an average 379.57 banding hours with 281 captured species, 55 species, sorry, and 34 recaps. And some of our future projects here for Trinidad, we, in Peerview, looking at landward monitoring program to assess our local population, motor tagging for migratory routes and distribution, GPS monitoring on migratory birds to detect migration routes, and seabird banding for monitoring shorebird populations. So these are some projects that we really want to work on in the future, along with our partners in flight. And we want to offer bird banding workshops as well. So our first bird banding workshop ever was in February of 2024. So we really got down to it, coming back from North America and on Trinidad, starting banding and then learning a brand new aging and sexing technique really meant that we were starting from scratch. And so Holly Garrod came. Holly Garrod is an American ornithologist who works with the Birds Caribbean team. And she came here in February and we did a molt workshop. So we call it a mini molt workshop. We had a molt board and we invited some local community members as well as university students. So we had just like a wide scope of people who came to the workshop in February. And one part of our program as well is education and outreach. Now, this is my favorite part, and I'm very sorry if it sounds like I'm rushing. I know that I have a 10-minute time, so I'm trying to cover everything that I can. This is my favorite part. Okay, great. So education and outreach, we do community engagement through workshops, camps, festivals, and field trips. And so one of my favorite things would be the field trips, camps, everything around education and outreach is my favorite department. So here you could see us doing some banding with the public. This is the kids edition because we do have banding with the public. And then we took the kids to field trips so that they could get a different experience in learning about environment and biodiversity in different ecosystems. And then this year, we celebrated the Brasso Seco Bird Harvest, or the Caribbean Endemic Bird Festival and World Migratory Bird Day celebrations. So every year, Birds Caribbean and the Environment for the Americas collaborate to put on festivals. Birds Caribbean do the Caribbean Endemic Bird Festival and tag along with the theme of the World Migratory Bird Day by Environment for the Americas. And this year's theme was Protect Insect, Protect Birds. So we use this as an opportunity to highlight the cicadas that would have emerged from the soil this year, the grand emergence of cicadas. And so we did a march to save soil for cicadas. And here you could see on the very left would be Auntie Simone sitting with her group. She was on Team Birds, and they are about to construct a nest habitat, so a bird habitat. And then we had Team Birds and Team Insects, where we would have specially crafted masks for the children and had a different booths So we had here top right, Javed Umardeen, who was giving us a demonstration. Javed is a community beekeeper. He has an apiary, he's a farmer, and he's also a naturalist. So he's very versed in his study of bees. And then bottom, you'll see us doing habitat construction for an insect. So everything that we would have learned from Javed, we went and deployed it to make our insect habitat. And these are just some more highlights. So we had some peer review going on, we had data collection going on, and we're really wanting to establish like an entire curriculum around this. So that's one of the things that we're working on, so that we can continue this program, not just once per year, but have it implemented in schools as well, and have a program going on where students can use or understand how to use these things as tools for research. Some of the challenges that we face, like I would have said, firstly, there's a new system for aging and sexing birds called the WRP system, or the Wolf Rider Pile system. And we're really data deficient. So like I would have said in the beginning, there was nobody on the island that was actively collecting data to study birds, our birds. And that really created an impact for me. And then learning WRP in North America, and coming back here to use it as a tool to age and sex our birds was really a challenge. So we really needed the help, and our Birds Caribbean family was right there on the button at all times, ready to answer questions. And we share a group where we're constantly communicating about aging and sexing birds using mold strategies. So it has been a challenge for us. That's one of our challenges, is that we're starting from scratch, and we need to collect all of the data and analyze all of the data to continue making conservation management plans. The other very crucial challenge that we have, of course, is financing. So funding is really hard to come by for a new grassroots organization. And we're pretty much brand new. TTBO was registered this year, 2024. We started talks of TTBO in 2023, but we were officially registered in 2024. So that has been proven a challenge in securing funding to be able to do some of our programs. And of course, the usual, having volunteers, full-time work. So we're basically doing everything. The core team is doing everything all at once. And we want to pursue communities. We're really looking at pursuing communities mostly for training and for doing research. So that has been a challenge as well. And I hope to come back and tell you more about challenges that we've experienced and more things that we see along the way. And I would really like to say thanks to our partners, the Birds Caribbean team, the Institute for Bird Populations, the Environment for the Americas, KBO, and of course the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, who give us all permits here on Trinidad and Tobago. And now a big shout out to the GYBN team. I'm so excited to be here sharing this with you, and looking forward to more connectivity all around. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Giselle. Yeah, so I actually have been to the Bird Festival once before last year, and this year was my second year, and it has been such a joy to see it transform into what it is today, and I can only see it getting better. So with that, we will move right into our moderated discussion. Once again, I'm Simone, I'm the moderator, I'm part of the GYBN Caribbean team. And yes, so it would be very remiss of me to not acknowledge that we have a full female panel. Love that for us. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I am an ecologist. I saw that we have a few ecologists here. Giselle mentioned that she's an ecology student. And one of the things that concerned me a lot, and that I also saw in your presentations, was the connection between humans and the rest of our non-human world. And we all know that biodiversity conservation is much about the biodiversity as it is about the people that benefit from it. And I want to say that really loosely because we get really accustomed to not thinking of ourselves as biodiversity, you know. It's a very cliche term to say, you know, humans are nature, but I think that it's important that we start to recognize ourselves as part of the network of all living things and moving throughout space, being very interconnected with everything around us. And I think all of the presentations so far definitely highlighted that. And so I just want to start by posing this question to the panel. In your experience, what are your thoughts on what is needed as priority to strengthen the ties or engender awareness of the strong ties, the strong interconnectedness between humans and our non-human environment? So I would like to start with Dr. Daniel, if you could start us off with that question.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks. That's a good point you raise. I have been doing more work with folks with backgrounds in archaeology and anthropology, and that's something they often raise. As an ecologist, our training is often focused on the natural environment, and we treat humans as separate from it, but we're not separate from it. We're part of it. And I think that has been part of the reason we've been trying to refocus on work on not just looking at our natural environment, but considering that we rely on it, and then our cultural heritage is part of it as well. So jumping off from that, I'd say, I think it's really important for us as part of our messaging to make that very clear. Also that many of us don't recognize simply that many of us rely on the natural environments, and folks don't, especially in small island states, like we are so tied to our natural environment, we don't realize it. Even folks who may not be ecologists. So I think part of the messaging is for us to connect people to nature. They're already connected, but they sometimes don't realize the way in which they're connected. They don't realize the way in which they're dependent on it. And so I think we just need to do a better job in engaging folks to make that connection. If you talk to someone who was a fisher folk, they already know this already. This is information that's already prevalent in their minds. But I think just to the average person who may be working in a hotel or a bar or so on, we don't often see our relationship as tied. And I think we just need to do a better job in showing people those connections because they're already there. We just need to help them see it.
Thanks. And I you know, I often like joke with my friends about having a inconsequential job that allows you to kind of just not feel like any of this is important. And then I'm like, but what is an inconsequential job? Like everything that we do is tied to the ecosystems that support us, literally. It doesn't matter if you're an accountant or a lawyer. Like if we didn't have fresh water, like we would not be here. You know, and I think everybody ought to be able to receive this message, you know, and be open to receiving the message. So I just want to pass it on to Natalie and then to Giselle for your thoughts.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Simone. I think it goes back to how we are phrasing it. I couldn't agree more with you that we are part of nature, but I think we speak a lot as if this nature is this outside thing of ourselves, and that and it's always, like I said in my presentation, it's kind of like historically it's always been this conversation of like it's us against nature, or making communities feel like the burden is on them, that they need to change their behavior to save nature instead of saving themselves. And I think it really has to get back to this this messaging of that, and just how we even in our own circles communicate these issues. I'm not an ecologist. I'm a natural resource economist. So sometimes I'm often out of the language loop myself. But I think that I think that we really have to rephrase how we communicate the issues. The issues are affecting the people. We will not have clean water anymore, right? Our water is threatened. Our community health is threatened. You know, it's always nature's threatened, but we are threatened by this. Yeah, so just in our language, and I think it's on us that are in this field to seek to create communication that upholds this. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Giselle.
Hey, Simone. Hey, everyone. Thanks for the question. I think there has been historically a disassociation with us versus nature, just kind of like what Natalie and Jody is saying. But we always, it stems like a pyramid, right? We always stem it where man is on top and everything else is kind of like going down at the bottom. And we never look at the cyclic symbiosis of what we are and who we are in nature. And as ecologists, ecology students, biologists, everybody who's in this field, we often feel that we are the saviors and we have the answers and we know what to do and who we can tell to do it and how we can tell them to do it. And I feel that it is not so. I feel that if we do have some knowledge, because we don't, right? We don't have the indigenous knowledge. We don't have the correct answers. We don't know. And right now, all we're doing is hypothesizing, we're thinking, and as we think, we create, and as we create, we establish, and we keep going like that. But we also need to remember the language. We need to come down, right back down to our communities, and we need to spread the language, the very same language, in ways that meet them on their level, so that they too can understand we are whole and we can do this together, but we can only do it together. And if we have some different language, whether it be an academic language or whatever we think that we have, then we need to be able to translate that to communities where they can understand and we can teach them on their level. Even the word conservation, right? That's an issue for many people in many different ways. So language itself is a barrier. And I think us finding ways to meet our community members and meet whomever we are trying to get this message across to, meeting them on their level is really what's important for me. I'm sorry, I don't know if that answers your question.
It absolutely does. Thank you so much, Natalie and Giselle, for those remarks as well. Yeah, so I felt this sentiment, you know, as a early career ecologist, you know, I've tried to figure out, okay, like, how do I label myself? And, it kind of compelled me to also, looking for employment, do research on the like job titles and what people are calling this and what people are calling that, and doing all this reading up. And I've found that indeed, as you said, you know, conservation is something that is really like very taboo in different parts of the world, because you are seeing these large organizations like desecrating indigenous lands in the name of conservation. Like, what does that mean? And then in other parts of the world, you know, it's something that is highly coveted, you know, and I totally agree. And I also think, you know, we have that nature perspective, as Natalie mentioned. I read a book once and it spoke about like this need for people to disconnect themselves from nature, and like nature is this thing that we will never be able to reach, because we see it as so pristine and so far away from us and something to save and something to adore, but we don't see ourselves as part of it. So it was actually advocating for the removal of the use of nature as a term, you know, and I definitely advocate for the term ecology as it is defined as the understanding, the study of the interconnectedness of all things. So thank you very much for answering that question. We are a bit behind time, but I want to just ask, I don't know if this will miss my final question, just to make time for some Q&A, but I just want to ask, based on your experiences thus far, what do you think are some practical ways of driving this transformational action to be able to prioritize Caribbean biodiversity issues across the region and on an international level? So Natalie, can we start with you?
I think, how do we prioritize this at the international level? I think we have to elevate voices that are oftentimes not our own. It's not necessarily people that are like us, like necessarily doing the work, but of the communities themselves. And so how do we do that, right? How do we get their messages and their voices? I think that also there is this push for having it at the international level, but at the same time, if we do not work on the ground and like start kind of having that action locally, then I think that we're going to fail sometimes to realize the benefits directly, right? Because I think a lot of times on the international front, it's just a lot of talk, like conferences, a lot of talk. And so I think it's great. I think that we need to be there. I think that we need to have, I think there needs to be a voice, but I hate to say, it's not that I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying that I think that it kind of, the focus is like, what can we be doing? Like, what's the action on, like, in our countries and in our region, right? So.
Thank you. Jody, would you like to share next?
Sure. Yeah, I hear that frustration as well. Like, what do we actually do? I think it comes back to one of the things Natalie was the work that Natalie's focused on community engagement. I think that's something that we're lacking a lot of. And I think community engagement allows us to discenter, I guess, the technical folks. While we may be doing a lot of work to better understand these systems, there's a lot of information, knowledge, passion that people who interact with these ecosystems daily have. And I think we have to do a better job in engaging them and allowing them to speak. And additionally, I think forums like this, like you have a youth network that's across the Caribbean. I think these sort of platforms are important because we are facing similar issues. We're dealing with similar challenges, and I think we can help each other in many ways, whether it's finding a better way to communicate, whether it's skills we can transfer, whether it's information that be relevant for one particular ecosystem we're studying. I think all of this is particularly engagement. So yeah, I think definitely community engagement. And two, I think platforms like these where we're working across a region for similar issues, around similar issues.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think GYBN Caribbean is definitely well positioned to bring all these unique and similar issues to the forefront. Giselle, I'm handing it over to you.
Firstly, I think we need to be very, very clear to ourselves, truthful to ourselves rather, that we need to dismantle systems. We need to start from the top, and we can't keep seeing people washing down the rivers and wondering why they're washing down the rivers and not checking from the top, right? So we need to dismantle systems because these systems have allowed us to continuously contribute to the destruction of our own selves. And the destruction of ourselves includes the ego, right? Like we were talking about before, who has the PhDs and the MDs, and we're rolling around and we're thinking, oh, I don't need to take my time to explain anything to you because I spent my years in school studying this and you should do the same. And we leave communities just in the perils of trying to figure it out themselves. But we are talking about biodiversity and conservation, and we're talking about this within our ecosystem and how do we save things, but we're not talking about it with people. So we need to remember that firstly, for people to care about what's happening in their natural world and in their ecosystem, they need to firstly be cared about themselves. And we need to make sure that we spread that message. So we need to start in the ground, in the communities. We need to start dismantling these systems on the ground with our people, our locals, and creating pathways and being change makers in our communities and making sure our community member knows, listen, if you can't reach the school today, we're going to figure it out. How are you getting your lessons? How are we going to do this? How can we start creating impacts in our communities with our people to conserve our people as well as our biodiversity? And that's how we're going to reach on a global scale, right? Because I am borrowing today from my nieces and my community members who are younger than me. I am borrowing tomorrow from them too. This is not my future. This is their future. I am borrowing their future. And so for me to make an impact that's going to help them see the better and for them to see, oh, sorry, somebody tell me that I blew my video. I'm very sorry. For them to be able to see the impact, to create the impact, for us to reach a global stage. At this point in our lives, we can't keep striving to reach the global stage, right? But then let's say we're fighting 20 years from now, then where are we going to be? And they are going to be nowhere. So we need to first dismantle systems in our mind, break those barriers in our mind, and then break them in our communities. Go the extra mile for your communities. And that's how we're going to reach on a global scale. We're going to reach on a global scale by building communities, building each other, and then keeping that network going, networking with each other, and then getting it on that global scale. And I can see it happening for sure, 100%. I can see it happening. I just think that we need to focus as well as all humans for conservation in communities. And sorry for my blurry video.
That's okay, Giselle, no problem. Yeah, so I think something that is really overlooked is that in these, in rural communities, where there is a lot of land to be conserved and very strong land ties, there's also a lot of social issues, and we tend to divorce the two. And you make a really good point in the need to address both of them. And I can say, like, personally, from working with Giselle in the past and currently, like, it's very important, you know, like the stewards of tomorrow are facing very different realities in rural areas, and we really can't afford to divorce the social issues that they face from the conservation that we want to do or that we see necessary for the future of their communities and the countries as a whole. So with that, we are at 2:30. I hope that it's okay with those who can stay on for the time being, that we will just allow the audience to just ask a few questions and then we will end. So I would just ask for maybe 10 minutes more so we can give a five to 7 minutes for questions, and so we can open the floor up for questions now. Any burning questions, and to the panelists, you can definitely drop your links, any links that you wish to share in the chat to your work, and if you're open to being contacted, you can also do that. So I'd like to take any burning questions. I will, you can raise your hand. I actually do see a hand raised.
Michelle Small Bartley.
Yes, yes. You can unmute your mic and give your comment or question as brief as possible. Thank you.
Hi again. Just want to first say that I'm really appreciative for this webinar and for the presentations that were made today. Very impressed, I'll tell you. I just want to add, based on the questions that were being posed by the panelists, I'm coming from a psychological perspective because my discipline is actually an applied psychologist. That it was reiterated earlier that there is a symbiotic relationship between human beings and their environment. And so I do endorse that. However, I also endorse, I think it was Giselle who said that we need to be disruptive. I don't remember if that was the word she used, but essentially we need to be disruptive in our approach. If we're going to be taking a transformative approach, using a psychological perspective of change, that some of the things that came out today about sensitizing people, using a citizen science approach to having people involved in the things that in the community work, sensitizing people in the things that they're supposed to do is the only way that behavior change will come about. It is essential that as we go about this change, that we think about how the impact that we want to make. People usually change behavior based on the fact that they have recognized what is in it for them. So I think it was Natalie who mentioned about changing the approach of using, identifying the human benefits and linking it to the ecological benefits. And I think that is a plausible approach that should be taken, because we all, as human beings, we all want to know what are the benefits that we will be getting in order for us to make the change in our lives. So that's my encouragement as we move forward, that we seek not to maybe go from the high level first, but to seek to start from the very local level of bringing about behavior change that can actually impact and have a ripple effect as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. Duly noted, agreed, and I think that we have a really solid foundation here, and we've heard from 3 really amazing people doing amazing work, and we can only look forward to better, truly. Thanks, Dr. Daniel, for being here. I'm not seeing any questions yet, but if you do have any questions, drop it in the chat now. This is your time. Again, we have some amazing presenters here today with us, and if you do have any questions for them, please drop them in the chat. Thank you, Dr. Daniel, for being able to be here today with us and share. She did leave her contact information and websites for anyone who's interested in following up. So I have a question here from Vaughn. And it says, what are the biggest challenges in securing funding for biodiversity projects in the Caribbean, and how have you all been dealing with this? Natalie, I'd like to pose this question to you.
The biggest problems reaching funding. Well, I can say a lot of countries within our region do not qualify for a lot of aid that exist outside of the region due to GDP. So for example, my own country, the Bahamas, doesn't qualify for many aid programs, number one, because we have a disproportionate amount of expats that live here, and our GDP is not shown of what our everyday Bahamians reality, unfortunately. And we actually see this in a lot of other countries in our region too. So just access to grants and funding as well. But I think that we have to change the systems of funding. So a lot of times in this work, it's very dependent on mechanisms that are outside of the region. But we have to look at how do we create this work in a way that is really from a business perspective and encourages actually investment from even our own people in our own region that might be interested in investing in these type of solutions, etc. Because right now the model is a little bit broken in terms of that we're kind of waiting on these handouts from outside of our region. And and it's not consistent funding. A lot of times, like I said, our countries don't qualify, or the work doesn't qualify, etc. And so I think we really need to look at how do we diversify these funding mechanisms that we currently have for our work, to also try to take control of the funding from within our region if we can as well, so that we're not dependent so much from outside. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. So I want to throw in a point and ask Giselle to weigh in on this. I know Giselle mentioned that funding has been a challenge. And so I want to ask also from the perspective of a youth-led organization, and youth-led and rural, I suppose, as well, you know, like in terms of these realities that you have right now, what would be your thoughts in terms of the challenges in securing funding, Giselle?
So I think most of our challenges securing funding would be that we are data deficient, right? We just started, and also being in a rural space. So both of our so we span both islands, Trinidad and Tobago. Both of our offices, if I may say, because we don't actually have any office space or anything like that yet. We operate out of our homes. And here in Brasso on Trinidad is a rural space, and in Tobago it's in Speyside, which is also a very small rural fishing village. And I feel that most very large organizations don't yet see the potential in such small youth-led organizations that occupy rural space, because they want a very quick response. They want very quick turnovers. They want to see, I give you funding to do something now, and you need to have results for me by next year, which sometimes can be possible. But in communities like this, where we want to capture and analyze progress over periods, and actually utilize this data to make plans, it can pose a really great challenge for us here. And so we've been opting to, one, we need to write more grants so that we could do more research work, because that's really what the stumbling block is. We want to do research and we're doing it out of pocket. So we need to get grants to fulfill that for us to be on the field. And then two, work on more internal, as Natalie would have said, internal funding, where we can create opportunities to continue generating funding within communities and then span to the countries.
Thank you so much, Giselle, for that point. So I'm also seeing Natalie. Yeah, I saw Natalie raise your hand. You can go ahead. Just keep it brief so we can close off after this.
I just wanted to know, I put it in the chat, but a lot of donors actually don't want to fund salaries. And as a young or under 35, so a lot of the work that CEO Life has done, we've actually not been, ourselves and our team, been paid for it, because donors will not pay for salaries. So they just want to pay for assets. And I think that as like a young person or younger people in this field, it's very disheartening, because the work needs to be done. And the youth of the world need to have careers and need to be paid for it. And otherwise we're going to leave and we're going to go to other fields. And this is why also the work doesn't get done. And it needs to be valued. Conservation needs to be valued. And I don't really like the word conservation, as someone else said, but this work to protect our communities' health needs to be valued and paid for. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I mean, I've had like firsthand experience with that as well, being part of this Caribbean program that was put forward in order to get more applicants from the region to grants. And, you know, it was like, I actually brought it up with them. And, you know, I put forward the point that it was a UK-based organization or consortium of organizations. And, you know, I put forward to them, you all you'll need to understand the socioeconomic, sociocultural realities of the people that you're trying to reach out to. You can't just like place this every one size fits all like thing on the global south as you do the global north, for example. So yeah, definitely. So we are just over time. So I just want to thank everyone that stayed on to hear this conversation and be part of this conversation. I do want to thank our presenters, our specially invited guests, our audience, and my team, the GYBN Steering Committee, for being part of this launch event. We did learn quite a lot today. I think there's a lot more discussion to be had. And there's a lot more that we have to face, you know, as communities, as actors in this space. And I hope that we can find ways to connect with each other and be part of really fruitful, diverse projects and relationships and futures. So I just want to thank you all for being here. Once again, I would just like to congratulate the GYBN Caribbean Chapter for their official launch today. I'm wishing you all the very best in whatever you have planned for International Biodiversity Day, if you do. And with that, I would like to say thanks once again and goodbye, everyone. Thank you.